Conversaciones que transforman, palabras que iluminan, encuentros que conmueven. CITA en una nueva temporada de Citas Conscientes, crea un espacio donde la conciencia y la comunicación te invitan a la reflexión. Citas Conscientes, con CITA.
Neale, I am so honored to have you in front of me right now. The other thing that out of respect to you is that normally, again, I would make an introduction of how important you are, how amazing you are.
You don't need to explain all of this.
Some people get offended if I don't give them that time.
I give you one sentence. Neale Donald Walsh is the greatest human being in the world. That's all you have to say.
But wait, are you Argentinian? That was the joke. I'm playing.
Very good.
Have we started our interview? Do you mind if I take 15 seconds in silence? 15.
1001, 1002, 1003.
All right, let's start. Are you ready? Are you feeling okay?
Let's see. Pulse is normal. Temperature is normal. My teeth are not falling out yet. I guess I'm okay.
One of the things that when I started reading your book really hit me is when you said that you took dictation from God. And I couldn't help, every time I read that, I couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Like, wait a moment, why you? Why not me? Why not us? Are you the chosen one, Neale?
The major point made in the Conversations with God dialogue is that all people are having conversations with God all the time. They're simply calling it something else. They may call it women's intuition, or they may call it a psychic hit, or they may call it an epiphany, or they may call it a sudden insight, but all people are having a conversation with God all the time. The only difference between me and most other people is I wrote it down. I picked up a pen and wrote down the moments of what some people call women's intuition. I wrote down what I was hearing. And the other difference between me and other people is I then asked questions. How could that be true? Or, well, what about this? Or what about that? So I allowed myself to argue with my own intuition. And when I argued or questioned my own intuition, I received replies to every question that I asked. And I simply wrote down the answers that I was given. But many people have done this. In fact, about 5 months after my first book was released, I received a letter from a lady. Honestly, I forgot where she was from now, but I remember that she wrote a letter and she said, I'm sorry to have to tell you that there is a lie on the cover of your book, an outright falsehood on the cover of your book. Yes. And I said, what is the lie? And she said, it says something about an unusual, what does it say underneath the title? An unusual,
uncommon dialogue.
an uncommon dialogue. She said, and she said to me in her letter, there's nothing uncommon about it.
Wow.
I have a conversation with God all the time. I'm always having conversations with God. She said, I know that many people do. So your book has a big lie on the cover. And I said, well, you know
Oops.
what? That's really funny. I didn't write that. I didn't write that line. That line, that subtitle was given to the book by the publisher. They just put it on there, Conversations with God, and they wrote down an uncommon dialogue because they thought that it was an uncommon dialogue. But I said, you're right. It's a lie. It's a great big falsehood. And it's not true. There's nothing uncommon about it. So the answer to the question you began this interview with, why you? The answer is, it's not just me. It's everybody in the world is having their own experience of connection with the divine. They're simply calling it something else.
And I kind of suspected what your answer would be, but then I thought about another question. Because God says in the dialogue with you that he communicates with us through feelings, thoughts, and experiences. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So he's talking to me pretty much all the time. But then he says, but not every thought, every feeling, every experience comes from me. And I'm like, oh, darn it. So now what? And he says this very big word, discernment. And I was wondering then, how would I discern between what my own thoughts, feelings, and experiences are as compared to those that come directly from God? Can you help me with that, please?
Of course, I asked God the same question. How am I supposed to tell the difference? And God said, it's really quite simple. She said, Neale, messages from me are always filled with freedom, joy, and love. If the messages you're receiving are not filled with freedom, joy, and love, then they're coming from someplace else. If the message contains fear or apprehension or doubt or negativity of any kind, then the message cannot be from me. But if the message is overflowing with freedom, joy, and love, then it's a message that has come to you from the divine. And she also said, I want you to understand that these messages are not coming to you from someplace outside of you. These messages are coming to you from within you. The messages are not coming to you from on high somewhere, from down, but I have placed eternal wisdom, eternal clarity, deep spiritual awareness within every sentient being in the universe, not just the sentient beings on the planet Earth, but all sentient beings in the cosmos are simply individual expressions of divinity, so that you have divinity embedded within you. It is part of who you are. So when you pray to God, really in one sense of the words, you are actually praying to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you're calling forth the wisdom from within you. Therefore, you have nothing to learn in your life. You merely have to remember who you really are. And once you call that memory forward, it's something you never forget.
So you made a comment earlier about the publisher kind of putting his hands on your book and adding a title that may have not been the best option. And immediately when you said that, I thought, see, it only takes one human to touch something that's sacred to just mess it all up. And now you said, we're pretty much like God's offsprings. We're a piece of him.
We are a piece of her for sure.
Right. Piece of her, piece of him, piece of it. But then if it, she, him, his, her is pure and perfect love, as it, she, him describes itself, herself, himself. I'm not going to keep doing this. Why in the world does human love hurt so badly? And sometimes it's so cumbersome and complicated.
Because there's something we want out of it. When there's nothing we want out of it, it will never hurt us. The only thing that hurts us about love is when we don't get back what we thought we deserve because of the investment that we have made. But that's not how we love another person. When you truly love another person, you need nothing back from them. You know, if I only love my wife because of what she can give me, then I'm loving myself, simply using her as a channel to experience love for myself. But if I love my wife no matter what she gives me or doesn't give me, if I love her simply because I see her across the room and I find her to be totally adorable and totally lovable, just as she is, if she doesn't give me anything, then I've learned how to truly love. The way we love a baby. We don't hold a 6-month-old baby in our arms and say, I only love you if you give me back what I need, because we need nothing from a 6-month-old baby. That's called pure love. When we love without receiving or even expecting or even hoping for anything in return. Now, here's the irony. The irony is when we love somebody that way, we often get back more in return than we ever dreamt of, because that person looks at us and says to us, nobody has ever loved me the way you do. I will give you all of me because nobody has ever loved me the way you do. That's what's interesting about loving people with pure love. But the answer to your question, why is love so painful for most people? Because most people think that love is an investment. I invest in you and I need to get a return, like investing in stocks on the stock market or investing in some kind of company. But no, love is not an investment. Love is pure giving without a need for anything in return. The way we love a 6-month-old baby, or the way we love a horse, or a dog, or a kitten. We know how to love that way. We know how to love that way. We simply can't love another human being that way because we fall in love with what they can give us. That's why I was married so many times, because I fell in love with women because of what I thought they could give me. But finally, I met a woman and I decided I'm not going to love her because of what I can get from her. I'm going to love her because of what I can give to her. And that changed my entire life. This is how God loves us. But we can't believe in a God who needs nothing from us. We can't believe in a God who wants nothing from us. We can't believe in a God who demands nothing of us. We think that God demands certain behaviors from us, and if he doesn't get those behaviors, we will be judged, condemned, and punished with everlasting damnation. That's what most of the world's religions teach us. That's why I wrote a book called God's Message to the World, You've Got Me All Wrong. Folks, God said to us, folks, you got me all wrong. I don't need anything from you for me to be happy. I only want you to be happy, the way you would treat a 6-month-old baby. Because you are the babies of the universe. Human beings are the infants of the cosmos, just beginning to learn how to truly walk on your own.
It's hard to ask you another question about this one. I just don't want to hear anything else. I want to just ingest, digest, make it my own. You said something that's also such a change in the game, because ever since I was young and I underwent a difficult situation, I would say to myself, well, this is part of the journey. Life is a school. You're here to learn. But then you read Conversations with God, and God says, life is not school. This is not about learning. And he says, this is about remembering. This is the question. Neale, I do want to remember. I'm committed to becoming the highest version of myself that gets me as close as possible to God. But I forget all the time. I have some kind of amnesia. I just tend to forget when the situation gets really hard and strenuous and challenging. I forget. So is there anything, a tool, a word of wisdom, a resource that I could use to remember, to remind myself that I need to remember?
Let me back up just a second and talk about this business of needing to learn something. God said to me, Neale, is there a tree outside your house anywhere? And I said, yes, there's a lovely tree right outside my window. It's 25 feet tall. It has a beautiful canopy. It's a beautiful oak tree. And God said, tell me, what has the tree learned since it was a seed no bigger than your fingernail? And I said, well, the tree hasn't learned anything. It's simply grown into itself. And God said, are you telling me, Neale, that I put into the seed everything the tree needed to know to become that beautiful, beautiful specimen outside your window? I said, yes. You could put it that way, yes. And God said to me, and so, Neale, if I so loved the tree, would I not all the more love you? I have put everything you need to know in the little seed that you call yourself. That's what you see in a baby. You see not just their innocence, but their true essence, which is why you love them completely, because you see that they are pure, simply pure love. Now, as to the question you asked me, when I catch myself forgetting, and really, to use an interesting turn of phrase, when I forget to remember, I allow myself to notice what's really going on in the moment that I am forgetting. Whether it's a difficult moment, a challenge, somebody's being unkind to me, or an event has occurred that is unwelcome in my life, whatever it might be, I've learned to ask myself life's magic question. This is the tool that I use. You ask me if there's a tool? Yes, for me there is. I have found a tool, and the tool is what I call life's magic question. This is the question I ask myself whenever I am finding myself in a moment in which I'm forgetting who I am and why I came here. Life's magic question is this. I look at what's going on in that moment and I say to myself, wait a minute. What does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? Wait a minute, wait a minute. What does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? So if my wife and I are having a little disagreement in the kitchen and that moment is not going very well, instead of being defensive or feeding negative energy, I simply ask myself, what does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? And the answer comes to me almost immediately. And I say to myself, I see. This is an opportunity for me to announce and declare, express and fulfill, demonstrate and experience who I choose to be. And who I choose to be is who I really am. I'm not an imposter. I'm simply that pure baby that someone else once held in their hands. I'm simply a grown-up baby, which is, by the way, what I call my wife. My nickname for her is, "You're my big baby." And now she even signs her notes to me. "Your BB, B period, B period." She signs all of her little notes to me. "I love you forever. Your BB, your big baby." Because when I see her with the purity of what she was like when she was 6 months old, I see who she really is. And I love the purity of her, even when she has forgotten who she is. So I call her my big baby.
I love it. I love it. You said you had many marriages. I've had only one for 34 years, still together.
You were married when you were 3 years old?
No, actually, it was 1.5.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That explains how you could have
Yeah,
her.
he kidnapped me from the crib.
Now I understand.
I'm not that young. 34 years with him. And I've divorced him so many times. I never left the house. He never left the house, right? And we remarried so many times. And I feel this is really my vehicle for awakening. And he keeps me awake all the time. But I'm going to tie this to the seed of the tree that you mentioned before, and the baby, even. Because, I'm always like a human brain defending myself and trying to look for ways of justifying my point and my pain more than my point, my pains. Because my pains are the ones that give me the identity. If I have no pains and no problems, who am I? I'm lost, right? I need some pains and problems.
Or you're like the Buddha, or you're a master like Jesus, Mother Teresa, or Teresa of Avila, or Joan of Arc, or Julian of Norwich, or any one of a series of female or male masters. Or you can deny that. You can decide that you're not that. But
That's
she just,
exactly my point. The seed and the baby. don't have my brain. And I've come to the conclusion that my brain is my biggest enemy of all. Myself, my own device.
Your
It's not
mind.
outside. Right? It's not my husband who does that to me. It's me. This biggest enemy.
Yes.
So just yesterday, I was thinking about I am gonna have a meeting with Neale Donald Walsh. Oh my God. I was like almost in tears. I was like joy and in bliss, and out of the blue, an intrusive thought hits me hard. What if I mess up? What if I mess up? And I remembered God's words in your book, the sponsoring thought. And right there, I had a choice to make. I'm like, okay, I'm looking for sponsors. Come on, come on. I need sponsors. Like, who's available? Not you. You're not gonna get me. Sorry. Bye. Thank you. And immediately, I neutralized my state of being, state of mind, state of emotion because I chose deliberately my sponsoring thought. I know about that. Maybe someone who's listening to us has never heard of that idea, notion. Would you mind talking to me a little bit about this, the thought behind the thought?
Well, I think you've described it so perfectly that there's very little that I could add that would help make it more clear. You're very clear, but I guess I would say that our entire experience of ourself from moment to moment is based on the thought that sponsors that experience, which Conversations with God does call our sponsoring thought. And you've made it very clear, even though most people are not aware of this, that we can actually choose a sponsoring thought. That is, our sponsoring thought does not have to be something that we were given by our religion or our culture or our family or our experience, some television program we've watched or some video game we've played or some book we've read. The sponsoring thought does not have to come to us from any place outside of ourselves, any place at all, not even from our parents. Our sponsoring thought is invited from within us. Every act is an act of self-definition. That's a statement that God made to me in my conversation, Neale. Neale, surely you understand that every act is an act of self-definition. You're simply moving through your life defining and choosing not only who you really are, but who you choose to be in the next moment. And when the choice you make is the highest choice you could possibly imagine, you do turn into a master. You have mastered your own life. And when you do the thing that we popularly call die, which you do not really do, you never really die, but you simply change the form in which you live your life. But in the moment that you are changing the form in which you experience life, you can look up at those around you who are still residing and still going to be residing in the physical world, and you can say, I discovered, experienced, and expressed who I am. And it makes me so happy to leave this planet with a full awareness of who I am and of who you are. And then we can thank those around us for the role they played in making it possible for us to know ourselves in truth and with full awareness. And so Yes. The sponsoring thought is a thought which sponsors our experience. You've explained it perfectly. And the great secret of life is that we can choose our sponsoring thought. We do not have to use the thought that has been given to us by our family or our culture or our religion or some book we've read or some movie that we've seen or anything, not even the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or the Book of Mormon or one of the other 250 sacred scriptures that exist in the world today. The sponsoring thought comes from deep within if we choose for it to. And you've made that decision, you've made that choice, which is why when your husband sees you coming from that place, he says, I choose you again this day. My wife and I make that announcement almost every night of our life. We crawl into bed together, and not because we might have a romantic sexual experience. That has nothing to do with it. But we're facing each other, she on her pillow, me on my pillow, and we say to each other, I choose you again this day because I see who you really are. In America, there's a wonderful movie called Avatar. I'm not sure if that movie ever made the theaters in your country, but in our country, there was a wonderful love story called Avatar. And it was the only Hollywood movie made in the past 50 years where the lovers in the movie never said, I love you to each other. They never said, I love you. They looked at each other in the movie over and over again and simply said, I see.
And I have to edit this part. I'm sorry.
Don't you dare edit this part. Because if you edit this part, then people do not get to see how touching and how powerful these words are. Don't edit anything. Be naked in front of the world, and the world will fall in love with you.
There was one sentence in your book that struck me when I read it. I don't know if I have been able to fully understand the depth of those words, but it has to do a lot with what we're talking about. It says, God wants to realize through us. And I think I read it like 10 times and I highlighted it and I underlined it and I put like hearts around it and exclamation marks. God wants to realize through us. And I was like, wow, what an honor. So loving. It's like warm in my heart when I say those words. And at the same time, immediately after I said that, I felt completely overwhelmed. It's almost like, that's a lot. Do I have space in my humanity to become God? And if the answer is yes, Is suffering needed? Can it be a little easier and flowy and like joyful?
Well, if you read the life of the Buddha, for instance, he did not suffer. Suffering and pain are two different things. Pain is simply a physical or emotional experience. Suffering is our decision that it shouldn't be happening. But when one of the ladies with whom I had a wonderful relationship gave birth to our triplets, I was there, right at her side, in the birthing room. I held her hand as she birthed 3 beautiful sons, one after the other. She was in pain, but she did not suffer because she knew that the pain was bringing forth new life. Now, when we understand that about all the pain in our life, that pain is simply a process by which we give birth to new life within ourselves, then we become truly a Buddha. We experience pain, but we do not experience suffering. And that's why the Buddha is called the Buddha, because he understood the difference between pain and suffering. So, what I have learned, or I should say remembered, what I've come to remember in the later years of my life is to simply accept with gratitude all the experiences and all the events of my life, even those which are unwelcome. And I simply ask myself life's magic question. Wait a minute. What does this have to do with the agenda of my soul? There's more going on here than meets the eye. Or as Shakespeare wrote famously in his most famous work, Hamlet, he wrote, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. I've come to understand that. It's true. And it's okay. I'm still growing. Like the tree outside my window, learning nothing but growing bigger every day.
One of the fascinating things that I did the last few days in anticipation of this time together is I not a whole lot, but I did search up a few interviews of yours. Like, who is this guy? What kind of texture his human side has? And I watched this interview with you 14 years ago. And by the way, you looked as wise and handsome as you look right now. However, I did notice a difference. You are now more joyous. Your energy is lighter. I feel the joy in your smile, in your way of talking, in your presence that I did not, and maybe it's me, I take all the responsibility. This is a judgment. I didn't feel that when I watched that interview. Is it my own personal opinion that the raw joy, fun, humor, they are all interrelated, play in our lives, change over time, and we can consciously use that as a tool.
I think it's the experience of most people, and my father definitely had that experience. I can recall my father's favorite saying. My father would say to me when I was a young man, over and over again, he would look at me and he would say about himself, so old, so soon, so smart, so late. So old, so soon, so smart, so late.
I didn't get it. No, I got it. I'm sorry. Yes, yes.
And so he would tell me, son, it's okay if you get smarter faster. But yes, it's true. I'm more joyful now than I was 15 years ago because I, I made new decisions about what's really important in my life, what really matters, and about who I really am. And so my choices are different than they were 15 years ago and much different than they were 30 years ago. I know it's hard to believe, but for me, at least it's hard for me to believe. 30 years ago, I was already an old person. I was 50 years old 30 years ago. So I have to think, oh my gosh, I was here on the planet a half century 30 years ago. So it's taken me a while to make myself clear, to come to clarity about what's really important. And it's what I've discovered is that what's really important is nothing to do with my physical life. Money is not important. Fame is not important. Sex is not important. Sex is not important. Yeah. Wait a minute. Make sure. Okay, forget I said that about sex. Okay, forget.
I love you.
But I've learned what's important and what's not important. I've come to a place of remembering what's really important in life. And the only thing that's truly important now to me is, how am I being? Am I serving the agenda of my soul? I didn't come here to this planet to earn lots of money. I didn't come here to this planet to become a famous author. I didn't come here to this planet to have many, many, many different wives, like King Henry, who has 7 wives. I didn't come here. I didn't come here to this planet. Okay, so I have become a famous author. So I have had 7 wives. So I have had 9 children. I have 9 children. So I did those things, and none of it has anything to do with my true purpose, my real reason, as the French would say, my raison d'etre. The French have a wonderful phrase for it. Raison d'etre, my reason for being. My reason for being. And I realized I'm a human being, not a human doing. I'm a human being. And I've come here to be who I really am. And in moments when I have been that, everything suddenly makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing
No,
wrong
no,
with
no.
being a doer. It's what we are being while we are doing what we are doing. That's
Exactly. Magnificent. But I think I forgot to be
yeah.
what I did, and that was kind of my problem. And when you are conscious that you need to start being more than doing, you find yourself not knowing what the heck you're being or doing anymore. It's like a leap of faith. It's like, what now? How do you live under new terms and conditions? I've been in the corporate world, corporate America, for 30 years. I just resigned. And I'm really learning how to live without a heavy, huge identity of mine that I've been carrying around for 3 decades. So the feeling that I feel every single moment of my life is that of uncertainty. And at the beginning, it was very painful, very painful. Like, please, I need some clarity. I need to know, I need to do, I need to come up with a plan, until I turned the corner and I started feeling a sense of gratitude and peace in the uncertainty. So either I'm losing my mind completely, which I think I hope I do, because as I said, my mind is my enemy. So if I lose it, I'm winning this battle.
Well, Conversations with God said to me, Neale, in order to really experience who you are, you have to be out of your mind.
Oh, I'm doing great then. Thank you.
You have
That's
to
validation from God.
you have to be literally out of your mind. And people say to me when I tell them I had a conversation with God, what are you, out of your mind? I say, yes, that's exactly right.
I love it. I love it. It's gonna be almost 1 hour that we've been together. I could spend here the rest of the day, honestly, but I want to be very respectful of your time. This space that you've gifted me goes beyond any events, anything mundane and material. You've really nurtured my soul. And I think I'm in a position to say that these moments here now has everything to do with my soul's agenda. Thank you for your legacy. Thank you for your work. Thank you for being a light of inspiration.
Lovely to have spent this time with you as well. And I'm only happy if it has served you. So,
It has served me tremendously. I will be forever, forever grateful.
well, thank you for telling me that. Makes me feel very good. I hope that you continue to move forward in the experience of demonstrating who you really are. Nice work. Good job. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.